Good morning Year 4 and welcome to Tuesday's comprehension lesson. So this lesson is for the children who have got this booklet here, which is targeted at the Year 3 booklet. And for today, our comprehension is going to be on page 4 and 5. So it's going to be this sheet of paper here for your learning today. And you can see at the top it says an interview with Andy Seed. Okay, so that is the pages that you are working from for today's learning. Now before we start, we're going to do our spag starter as usual on the board. Okay, so let's start off with our spelling. And for our spelling, I need you to spot my spelling mistake. So I'm going to read you my sentence that I've written on the board. The teacher praised him for his hard work. Okay, so I've got a sentence which makes sense, but I want you to just have a closer look at my spelling error. Okay, so I'm going to read it once more whilst you have a look at home. The teacher praised him for his hard work. Okay, so I'm going to get my pink pen out ready to spot my spelling error. So who can tell me where the spelling error is? And hopefully you would have noticed that I need to put an SP above the word teacher, because although it sounds like we have the sound E in teacher, it's not spelt with an EE as we do with some other words. So it has got its own sound, so it's T and then it's EA. And then we can put the ch sound and the sound together. Okay, so the correct spelling for teacher is the EA, which also gives us the E sound. Okay? Okay, moving on to our punctuation. So I want you to identify where the missing punctuation needs to go. And this is my sentence that I've written on the board. What's the weather like today? Okay, so think about what sort of sentence I am writing here. What's the weather like today? Is it a statement or is it something else? Do I need something at the end here? Because I've missed some punctuation off at the very end of my sentence. Does it need a full stop? Does it need an exclamation mark? Does it need a question mark? I'm going to read it once more. What's the weather like today? So I'm asking, aren't I? I'm asking, so it's a question. And at the end of a question, we always need a question mark, don't we? So I'm going to put P for punctuation error, and I'm going to put a question mark right at the end, and that's what my question mark looks like. Now, can anybody else spot? I've got one more punctuation error in this sentence. What's the weather like today? Now, another way I could possibly say this sentence is, what is the weather like today? But I haven't done that, have I? I've shortened a word in my sentence from what is the weather like today to what's the weather like today. And to do that, I've had to put two words together. And when we do that, we need to use what we call an apostrophe. So where we would have what is, we've put those two words together, but I need punctuation here, so I need an apostrophe between my T and S for what is changes to what's. What's the weather like today? Okay then, so moving on to our final part of today's starter is my grammar. So can you identify the expanded noun phrase in the sentence? Remember, an expanded noun phrase is made up of how many words? 3. 2 of which are adjectives and 1 of which is a noun. So I've got 2 describing words and the noun that it's describing. Can you spot it in my sentence, okay? So Adam found a shiny round coin on the floor. Adam found a shiny round coin on the floor. So hopefully you will notice that we are describing a coin. So a coin is my noun. What are the 2 adjectives that describe the coin? Adam found a shiny round coin. So shiny and round are my 2 adjectives, and I'm describing what? I'm describing the coin, aren't I? So shiny round coin is my expanded noun phrase in that sentence. So well done if you spotted that much earlier than what we have on the video. So well done. So we've finished our starter for today. Now our learning question for today is to answer retrieval comprehension questions. Now you'll notice that today we are looking at an interview. So I want us to just have a look at what is an interview and what interview are we looking at today. So an interview is a structured conversation where there are two participants. So that means there are two people. One participant asks questions, and can you guess what the other participant does? The other person? They answer questions, so they provide the answers. So it's normally, an interview is normally between one person and another. It could be between one person and a group of others. For example, it could be an interview with Little Mix. Now there are more than one band members in Little Mix, so it could be that you've got the interviewer who is asking the questions, and then you've got a group of people, Little Mix for example, who are answering the questions. Now unfortunately your piece of writing is not on an interview with Little Mix today, but it is a really good interview, and I've had a look at what we are looking at today. Now this interview is for somebody who has been nominated and won a Blue Peter Award. Now I did a bit of research myself, and it's actually a true story. So it's a Blue Peter Book Awards winner. Okay, so it's a person who has won the Blue Peter Book Award. So you have to be nominated, people have to read your books and think, well, I really like that, so I'm going to put them forward for an award. And then out of the collection of people that have been selected, there is only one winner. And it was for this book that was written, and it's called The Silly Book of Side-Splitting Stuff. And the person who it's illustrated by, I don't know if you can see on the screen or whether you can zoom in, it's illustrated by Scott Garrett. And his illustrations are actually rather similar to Nick Sharratt. So it's really nice to see that some of the illustrations are very similar to some that we have seen, and we've had that illustrator and author in school, haven't we? And you can see on his book, the author is Andy Seed, and he's got his Blue Peter Book Awards on the front cover, and it's printed on there to show off that he has won an award because it's a really good book. So this is going to be a book about the author, who is Andy Seed, and he's having an interview with people who have nominated him for the Blue Peter Award. Okay. So before we go through onto question one, I'm going to read through just a small section of the interview, and then what I want you to do at home is to read through the rest of it. So when you've read all of the section and you are ready to begin your questions, then you can come back to the video and press play, so then it'll all make sense when we go through all of the questions that we've got on our piece of paper. But for now I'm going to start you off, and I'm just going to have a look at the first question and the first answer that we've got in our booklets. I'm going to put it underneath the visualiser so you can see it home, and if you want to follow with your finger, that's also absolutely fine, and you can have a look at your books at home. Right, so I'll go through the introduction as well on the video. So the introduction is the bit at the top here. So it says Andy Seed is an author whose book, The Silly Book of Weird and Wacky Words, was nominated for the 2016 Blue Peter Awards. His book, The Silly Book of Side-Splitting Stuff, won an award in 2015. In this interview, he talks about being nominated and his thoughts on reading. So it's going to be an interview about his thoughts on reading and his journey from being nominated to becoming a winner of the Blue Peter Book Awards. So here you can see that I've highlighted this is a question. So the question that was given to Andy Seed first was, what's it like to be nominated for a Blue Peter Award? So somebody's asking, what is it like? How does it feel like? And here you can see his answers are in this section below. He says, it is very, very special. Authors don't know that their books have been put forward for the award in the first place. So when the news arrives, it's right out of the blue and quite a wonderful surprise. It's a bit like finding a massive bar of chocolate that you've hidden, forgotten about, and then unexpectedly discovered. Except it's much better than that. This is doubtably exciting for me because I won the award last year and I had the memorable experience of appearing on Blue Peter, which is probably the greatest kids' TV show of all time. So you can see there was the question from the person who was interviewing, and then Andy Seed has answered his questions below. So that was just to answer one of the very few questions that we've got on here. Now what I want you to do is read from, do you think you would have enjoyed judging a book award when you were at school? You're going to read from that question, the answer to that, and the rest of the last two questions by the interviewer. When you are ready to move on, and you've read all of the interview for Andy Seed, you will then be ready to have a look at some examples of the questions we've got below. So I want you to read the rest of the abstract now. Okay, so hopefully you've read all of the interview with Andy Seed now, and you are ready and you are on track to look through some of the examples of the questions you've got in your book. Now I just want to draw your attention now to question 1. Now question 1 says, what do you think the phrase out of the blue means? Now some of you might know what that phrase means, but if you don't, it does actually say it in the text. Remember, today we are retrieving information from the text, so I'm going to go into the text and I'm going to get that piece of information out ready for me to answer. So underneath in my visualiser, we've got, what do you think the phrase out of the blue in line 3 means? Now I've actually highlighted it in blue here. Quite ironic that I've highlighted it in the colour blue, but I have highlighted out of the blue, and I've also highlighted where it shows me in the text in the same colour, so it's easy for you to see at home where the answers are in the text. So if we look at out of the blue, it says that it's in line 3, doesn't it? So I'm going to go to line 3, okay, and you can see in blue here, I'll zoom in, you can see where I've highlighted at home. So when the news arrives, it's right out of the blue. So I've started highlighting from where the phrase starts. And quite a wonderful surprise. So when we're talking about something being out of the blue, it's saying that it's a wonderful surprise. So it's a surprise, it's not expected. So in your books, where it says, what do you think the phrase out of the blue in line 3 means? So I could answer it by saying it means that it is, you could put it as a surprise, or you could put that it is unexpected. I'm going to put unexpected. Okay. So I just want you to have a look at the technique that I've used there. So I've highlighted out of the blue, and then for me to help me to see where that is in the text, I've looked at line 3, I've started highlighting from where the phrase is, and then it's given me the information just below line 3 where it says a wonderful surprise. Okay, now moving on to question 2. It says question 2, the word expectedly on line 6 is what? And this comes back now to our word classes. So what does each word mean? What sort of word class is it? Let's go onto the board so we can see. Okay, so let's just do a word class recap. So I've got 4 word classes here, and we're going to go through what each one of the word classes are, and then hopefully you can make your own mind up of what the word unexpectedly means. So when we say a verb, let's go on to a verb first. A verb is a doing word. It's something that you can do. So it could be to jump, it could be to run. That is a verb. It's something that you do. A noun. So what do we say at school to remind ourselves of what a noun is? So our phrase is a noun is a name, and then you would all say name at me. So a noun is the name of an object or a person. Then it comes on to an adjective. So let's have a recap of what an adjective is. We did look at this in the starter today with an expanded noun phrase, which is made up of 2 adjectives and a noun. So a noun was the object. An adjective is a describing word. So you could say, if we are talking about the sky, it could be blue. So that would be an adjective, it's describing the sky. Grey, dull, those are also adjectives that describe the sky. And then finally we've got an adverb. So it's similar to a verb because it has it in the word, so the word verb is in there, However, it's not a verb, it's telling me how a verb is done. So if I was jumping, I could be jumping quickly. So I'm doing it quickly. So an adverb, what we do in school to remember is an adverb often ends in ly. So an adverb is telling us how the verb is done. So when you come on to question 2 now, and it says to the word unexpectedly, you've got to circle which word class it is. Hopefully this word class recap has helped you with that. So you can start with question 2. Now I'm only going to go through one more example on the board, so I don't want to give you all of the answers for today's learning. And the last one that I want us to look at is question 5. Okay, and this is all I've got on here because I want us to look at this in a little bit more detail under the visualiser. And I want us to look at the layout of an interview. Okay, so let's look onto the visualiser at what it says. So if we look at question 5, it says, how does the text layout make it easier to read? Now the layout is how it is written. Thinking back to an article, we looked at the article of the jellyfish, didn't we? And the layout of an article was so that it was written in columns, and it also had a big heading, didn't it? It had a headline. So we'd often see that in a newspaper article or an online article. Now an interview also has a layout that we follow, and I'm going to show you this underneath the visualiser, just so you can see that they've made it easier for us to read at home. Okay, so I started off when we first started reading by referring to the questions at the top. And you can see if you look at yours at home, the questions where I've highlighted are written in bold. So the text is much thicker and you can see much more clearly where the questions are. When it comes to where Andy Seed is answering, it's not written in bold, is it? So you can see that I can see the questions really easily on my sheet of paper. So I've got 4 questions and all 4 questions are written in bold. So I can see where the interviewer is asking the question and where Andy Seed is answering the question as well. Okay, so when you come to answer for question 5, you can see that the layout of an interview also has its own way of being shown. So you've got you've got bold writing at the top. Those are for our questions. There's another question, so it doesn't have any subheading that tells us what is a question and what isn't, but the way that it's laid out is that we've got bold writing to show us where the questions are, and then we've got the answer written underneath in normal text. So that is how an interview is laid out. Okay, so good luck everybody with your work today, and I hope you enjoy reading this interview. I think it's really interesting. If you want to have a look at Andy Seed's book that he has written, you can also find that online as well, or even you can find it on YouTube. So good luck everybody, and I'll see you tomorrow.